South China Morning Post, 4th of February 2023, who gains the most from the military exercises between China, Russia, and South Africa. Later this month, China will showcase its ability to exert influence beyond its immediate region with joint military exercises with South Africa and Russia. At the same time, Moscow wants to prove that it has not been isolated by Western sanctions due to its invasion of Ukraine, according to analysts. However, most of China's pals are bought and are only loyal to her as long as she continues to pay. The exercises, which will take place from February 17 to February 26, will fall on the day after Russia's war in Ukraine, which has sparked international outrage, marks its 1st anniversary. As a result, South Africa is coming under increasing pressure from the West over its relations with China and Russia, as well as for hosting the military drills where Moscow intends to use its hypersonic weapons. 350 South African soldiers will participate in war simulations with Chinese and Russian troops in the east coast port cities of Durban and Richards Bay, the South African National Defence Force stated last month. According to Stephen Grusd, director of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs, for China, it is a signal that it is a major power to be reckoned with and that it, too, can project influence beyond its immediate region. According to him, the military drills served as a means for the three nations to strengthen their political connections. According to Grusd, Russia wanted to demonstrate that Western sanctions did not wholly cut it off and could still exert influence throughout much of the world. Given that South Africa will be collaborating with the country that detractors claim violated the United Nations Charter by invading a sovereign state, the military exercises come as the United States and many European nations question South Africa's claim of taking a neutral position on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This seems to put South Africa in the camp of Russia. The timing is abysmal and will make South Africa's relations with China and Russia more prominent than they otherwise would be, according to Grusd. Due to Moscow's assistance in the ANC's fight against white minority rule, Russia and South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, have long-standing connections. South Africa didn't participate in the UN vote last year that denounced Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to Grusd, I believe the West is also concerned about South Africa's seeming strong and deep ties with Western adversaries, as demonstrated by the drills. High-profile visitors, including Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and Josep Borrell, the head of EU Foreign Affairs, visited South Africa recently, adding to those worries. Yellen warned South Africa about breaking sanctions during her visit, while the head of the EU asked South Africa to support diplomatic efforts to stop Russia's war with Ukraine. Any country exercising with Russia as Russia fights a horrific war against Ukraine, the White House had expressed worry. The decision to hold the exercises was supported by South Africa's Minister of Foreign Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, who asserted that all governments conduct military exercises with partners globally, who can also discount Chinese financial generosity. At a press conference with Lavrov 2 weeks earlier in Pretoria, Pandor remarked, "There should be no requirement that any country conducts them with any other partners." Observers claim that the exercises are affected by Russia's invasion of Ukraine since they show Russia's ability to avoid international isolation in part. However, according to Paul Nentulia, a research associate at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University in Washington, the invasion of Ukraine played a role more ominously, the development of hypersonic weapons. As part of the joint exercises, the Russian frigate Admiral Gorshkov will be equipped with new hypersonic missiles, according to Nentulia. He said that these were especially violent weapons that could travel up to 25 times the speed of sound and had been deployed by Russia in Ukraine, but are useless unless they are employed frequently and on valuable targets dispersed throughout Ukraine. On the anniversary of its re-invasion of Ukraine, this may be a message from Russia to that nation. Additionally, it sends the US a clear warning that nothing will stop Russia from pressing its campaign. However, according to Nentulia, Ukraine's successful offensives over much of the second half of last year showed that such missiles were ineffectual in ground combat. According to Nentulia, Russia intended to demonstrate to the rest of the world that despite the sanctions put in place against it, it was still able to break free of international isolation and maintain strong international relations. Regarding China, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, last conducted training exercises in Africa in 2019, when it collaborated with the Tanzania People's Defense Forces on a 25-day exercise titled Sincere Partners. After a 3-year pause due to the pandemic that China caused, Beijing intended to restore military collaboration with African forces during the drills with South Africa, according to Nantulia. Interoperability was a key component of Drill Muzzy, the first naval exercise between South Africa, Russia, and China in 2019 that was placed off the coast of Cape Town. According to Nantulia, the exercise might represent South Africa's status as an African state capable of hosting two superpowers for simultaneous training exercises in African waters, increasing its strategic relevance in the context of the broader geostrategic battle between the US, China, and, indirectly, Russia. South Africa gains in terms of interoperability, according to Nantulia. Before COVID-19, China held 2 to 3 drills a year with African forces, Nantulia added. These drills were typically held between the PLA's routine anti-piracy patrol missions and were virtually always held during high-level diplomatic gatherings. Nevertheless, the fact that this month's military training exercises fall on the anniversary of the war has alarmed nations opposed to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The timing of the exercise is a propaganda coup for Russia, but I fail to see how linking China and South Africa's navies closer to Russia at this time benefits them, said David Shin, a specialist on China-Africa relations at the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. According to Douglas Yates, a political scientist at the American Graduate School in Paris who specializes in African politics, the naval exercise was a return to gunboat diplomacy and spheres of influence, just like during the Scramble for Africa, trying to demonstrate their prowess with blue water navies capable of projecting power far from their borders. According to Yates, the Russian efforts in Africa may be considered part of a new Cold War. If South Africa were to succumb to Russian anti-democratic propaganda, the US would lose its most crucial ally in the region. This new Cold War includes the ideological battle for people's hearts and minds. However, Yates said it would seem less menacing and forthright if there were no active conflict in Ukraine. Thoughts that the joint exercises would be a shocking geostrategic event were dismissed by Professor Zhou Yuan, Senior Fellow and Deputy Director at the Center for West Asian and African Studies at the Shanghai Institutes for International Studies. According to Zhou, the three nations' military exercises serve as a platform for political expression. He acknowledged that the date of the drills might appear improper in the eyes of the West. Still, he stated that the military exercise was more like a political proof of relations between the three countries and a new cooperation effort among BRICS countries. I don't believe the drill can do as much as many in the West claim it can. Russia's primary objective, in my opinion, should be to strengthen and expand its foreign alliances and look into potential solutions for resolving the current conflict.